Good morning to one and all present here. My name is Raghav, and let me introduce you to my team.
So I'm Cooper Wolf.
I'm John McMillan.
And I'm Seth Green.
So as you know, we are working with Scheels, and we also have our mentors over here, Josh and Byron, so who constantly supported us throughout the project. So we welcome you, sir. And let me go over to the. Let me have a company overview of the Scheels. So Scheels is a company that was started in 1902 in Minnesota, and it was started as a general hardware and general merchandise store. So right now it has 27 store locations in 13 US states, and it is headquartered in Fargo, North Dakota. So I'll tell you the need for the project. So there was a need to create an interactive shopping experience for the customers, which is easy and which could be used to, I would say, drive the sales through the comparisons, recommendations, rating, etc. The solution that we found out was the beacon technology. So beacons are a new way of interacting with the products, and there's a company called Estimote who provide these beacons. And so it contains two parts. One is the sticker beacon that will be connected to the product, and the other is the mirror, which will be plugged into the TV. Then for that thing to work, we needed a content management system so that the images can be loaded onto the beacons, and that can be connected to the receiver, and through that receiver, the images will be displayed on the screen. And after that, the Scheels will use our software Estimote beacons that will allow them to interact with the content to further the customer shopping experience. Thank you. Now Cooper will continue.
All right, so these are the two different types of beacons. The top image there are the sticker beacons. Like Raghav said, those will actually be placed into the products. So when they're picked up, they signal to what's the bottom image, which is the mirror beacon. And that just plugs in using an HDMI port and a USB port into the back of the TV. And that's kind of one of the weird designs of it, is that depending on your monitor, you might need like a USB extender or something like that to get it to reach around. So our kind of general schedule for how we wanted to develop this project was to first kind of just do research on the different tools and languages that we'd be using. We used React and C# for most of the programming. And John had a lot of experience with React, and I have a lot of experience with C#, so we were pretty good on that stuff, but we still wanted everybody to be familiar with all the different tools. The next step that we had to do was get the hardware from Estimote, and that was kind of one of our hiccups at the beginning of the year, was that it got lost in the mail, so kind of had to wait a little bit longer to actually get it and start playing around with it. Then we decided on the design for the content management system. This is more just like a proof of concept. The design, I mean, you could spend forever designing different things, but there was a few different things that we wanted to make sure that we included, and you guys will see that when we do the demonstration. But one of the big ones was to have some way to indicate for the on-hands whether it was at 0 or not, so currently in stock. So then we decided on like how the design should be kind of displayed in the store. They have their monitors as being vertical, so that was kind of a main point. Then we used React to get the initial wireframing done, so just kind of where all the different components are going to go on the screen. Got the database stood up that fits the same schema that Scheels has on their end, so everything should work when we pass it over to them. Wrote all the queries and then connected that to the content management system. So when you type in a store number and a SKU, it can pull everything from the database, and part of it's through web scraping, and then put that into the different React wireframing components to show everything. And then we just documented how we kind of put the finished images onto the actual mirror beacons so that when you pick up the object, it'll display on the screen.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a demo of how everything works. So in the background, we have a C# application that actually runs. And what that does is connects to the MySQL database, and then has an API that's exposed. So by calling a URL with a SKU and a store number, you can pull up all the product's information. So that's kind of broken up into two parts. The first part is the SQL queries. The second part is connecting via web scraping. So that takes in the SKU in the store and a couple other things that are returned from the SQL query, and then goes and scrapes the web for that product's information. So you can see we just have the C# application running in the background. And so then if we go over here, we have a React app that's also running in the background. And so as a user, you think about a Scheels employee, they would come in and enter in a store number, so something like 64, and then they enter in a product number. Then they go ahead and search for the SKU, and then it runs the queries and returns this. So you can see it's got the name of the product, it's got a price for the product, a rating, and then the image of the product, and then a short description, and then the web scraping pulls in reviews from online. So you can see the two most recent user reviews. And then in addition, like Cooper had mentioned, we have the on-hand counts. So for each of the different styles of the shoe, along with the men and women's sizes and the color, you can see how many sizes are on hand. And then, for example, here for men and women's 11 and 13s in black, there are no on hands, so it's highlighted in red, so you know that. And then as a user, as an employee of Scheels, you'd come in and hit generate PNG. And so then this takes a second. It basically takes the HTML and each of the components and packages them up into a PDF. And so right now it's a PDF so that the image can be rotated, but ideally what we'd like to do is switch that to a PNG. So then here you can see it's vertical now. Although it's a little bit backwards, it's actually horizontal when you look at it here, but when it gets loaded on the mirror then, it's actually a vertical image since the monitor's tilted, if you think about it that way. And so then I can show you guys a couple of other products that it works with. It works with every product, so we built it dynamically so that you can use it with anything. So for example, if you're doing something that's not a shoe, we used shoes as our demo, as the product that we've been kind of proof of concepting, but you could do it with something like a baseball bat or a bike or really anything. And we built everything on the back end generic enough to where it just takes in something, as you can see, a name, a price, the rating, the image, the description, the user reviews, and the on-hand counts. So for a bike, for example, it would just be one box for each size of bikes with different wheel sizes and stuff like that. Then you hit generate PNG again and it generates. And that's the gist of the content management side. So from a user perspective, the Scheels employee would then be generating these images. Then they have to take the images and load them onto the beacon mirror, which is that little thing that plugs into the TV or monitor. And so that actually plugs into the computer. And so then they can just take these files and drag them over and drop them into the mirror and load them on there. And then we'll show you a little demo of those working in the store. So as you can see here, we've got shoes on a wall. The user comes up and picks up the shoe. There's a little beacon inside of the shoe, and as you can see on the screen, it pulls up and displays the image. If they pick up more than one shoe, it'll compare both shoes for you or both products and do a little demo of the two. And then the user sets the shoe back down, and the image resets, or the screen resets. They pick it up, and now it's displaying again. The beacons have a lot of sensitivity, so you can actually adjust them. So for example, if a user picks it up and holds it for maybe 5 minutes or however long, as long as they're slightly moving every couple of seconds or every second, it'll keep the image displayed. But if they were holding it and they stop moving, for example, then the image stops being displayed because the beacon thinks that it stopped moving and that it's been set back down. So that was kind of one of the things that we didn't really realize until we got into the store when we were actually doing the demo and have everything plugged in and running. So that's something in the future to kind of look at and adjust for, is the sensitivity of the beacons.
So some of the issues and risks that we're going to be leaving for Scheels, like John said, is the beacons are very sensitive. You really got to find that sweet spot for what you want. And then the image generation needs to be rotated to be vertical since their display is vertical in store. And then our postmortem summary, finding times earlier was really hard, but then we sort of realized, hey, we gotta get this done. So we met up over the weekends and sat down for 6 to 8 hours. If there's there was anything we could do different, it was to ask Scheels for help earlier because they really helped us with the database, which was sort of the roadblock for most of the time. We learned a lot about working as a team, that it was very difficult to work together separately the way we were doing it because we had the database set up on Raghav's laptop, React app on John's laptop, and we couldn't really connect it. And then for future teams, they should find time right away to fit into the regular schedule, make it as a job, sort of, that they have to be there, otherwise they're not going to keep up on the team. Our estimation was also a little off because we thought, hey, it's the React app, John's got experience, database, C#, it should be fairly easy, but we kind of didn't really plan that out too well. And for the next steps, Scheels, you could look at like the image generation with the correct orientation, like John was saying, and then the multiple SKUs at once. Since our comparisons in the video there, when he picked up 2 shoes, we generated that in Photoshop, and in the React app, you could put in 2 SKUs and it'll generate that automatically. Any questions?
How would you address the problem where, let's say, a shopper looking for the shoes when it's a designated area and they put it anywhere where a bunch of other shoes are at? How do they find the? Is there any way to find the shoe?
It's a good question. I guess that'd probably be more of a Scheels question, but I have a little bit of not customer service experience working in retail. Probably something where you have little signs next to the shoes, so you know which shoes go where, and then hoping that the customers would return there. And if they don't, Scheels has tons of employees. They're on the floor all the time, and it's just making sure that they're doing a good job monitoring their appropriate areas, and whoever's responsible for the shoe department for that shift is making sure that all the shoes are in their correct locations. But yeah, it's a really good point.
The other part of that is Estimon does provide an app, and so you can actually do proximity right into the app on where the beacons are located. So you could do a sort of RFID model where, using your app, you'd be able to find the beacon.
And that's another cool thing for the future as well. Estimon's got a lot of cool features within their applications. They have a cloud management system for the beacons, so you can go in and manage the beacons on desktop or on mobile. And then also you can display images and information on the mobile and desktop. And so that's another thing I think about for future work as well. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And then also building a lot of that stuff yourself can definitely be done. So if Scheels chooses to in the future to pursue this more, they could develop some of those tools themselves internally. So
I have a question, or maybe just hear you guys share your thoughts on, Seth, you talked about some of the post-mortem teamwork stuff. What were your guys' thoughts on working in Jira, tickets, code checking in and out? I'm assuming most of that was new. How did you guys feel? Did that add to the teamwork ability? Just thoughts on your ideas there.
the version control is definitely one of the biggest struggles for us because I couldn't get Bitbucket working on my laptop, and Raghav couldn't get it working on his. So when the two of us were trying to check in code and swap that out between the two of us, it was really difficult because it ended up just being, okay, zip up all the files that you have and push those up to the internet. We were hosting on Google Drive and on Blackboard for a while. So I think just sitting down and actually spending time and devoting time to getting everybody on the same page for how that stuff works would have been really valuable. And then also doing the tickets, I feel like we had, instead of using Jira as much as we should have, we started just doing our own tickets in Slack and just writing out what people were going to do for the day or for that session when we were working, as opposed to having tickets, which then made it hard in hindsight to track the work that we had done individually, because then you have to go and scroll all the way back up and see where people had done stuff. So in hindsight, that would have been a really good idea to track it more chronologically using Jira, because then it shows a track record of the individual things we did, so it's easier to track what each person did as opposed to the deliverables of the whole group.
And also with that, me and Raghav kind of set up the database in the beginning. So me and him were talking in our own thread. So John and Cooper group actually didn't see that. So with Jira, it could have been everyone. But
Sure.
This is kind of a trivia. I don't know if you created those shoe rating kind of things and stuff, but it's independent of your project actually. But it just said rating of 5. That doesn't tell me anything. Out of 50, out of 5, out of so it would have helped probably to say out of something. I like what you were doing. I like the video in the store too.
I guess, I think it was at an earlier in-class presentation, you had mentioned, we are unable to pull the stock counts for particular colors, things like that. But it looks like you're able to do that now.
So at the moment that we were in class talking about that, we were missing the table, but then we got the table and then built everything in, and now it's all good. So
Okay.
any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.